Hi, welcome to Invisible Forces. This is a podcast from the founders of Genie. We're building a new wearable seeking to revolutionize how we monitor, track, and empower movement.
We're here to talk all things founders, student athletes, and everything in between. Join us for the movement.
Well, welcome to the first ever episode of Invisible Forces. And we are here today to learn about Stuart Bladon. He is the Patriot League champion, an expert horse rider. He's a resident tech wizard and a Duke decathlete. Welcome, Stuart Bladon.
Thank you very much for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastically today, yeah.
So, Stuart,
Ewan,
what's your fun fact?
my fun fact.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
Hit you for
goodness.
6 there, didn't I?
Yeah. I think probably the fun fact I usually go with is that I've seen a lion from horseback.
That's a lot of legs, that is. Tell me more. Where was this?
This was in South Africa. My dad's a veterinary surgeon, so he was doing some work out there, and I was lucky enough to be brought along. And we went on a horse riding safari, and I've seen many of the animals, but the lion's definitely the most scary because you're sat on lunch. So
no, I love that. That's a fantastic fact. I have not seen a lion on horseback, so I think that's pretty.
Not yet.
It could always be arranged.
You're still young.
Right. Before we get into this episode, before we learn about your journey as a decathlete, your journey as an AI expert, I want to hit you with some quick fire questions so the viewers can understand you, and I want you just as quick as you can. We'll fire through them.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Do my best.
Okay. What is your pre-game hype song?
Oh, Can't Hold Us.
Oh, ceiling can hold us.
Yeah, great one.
What's your favorite lift exercise?
Oh, the power clean.
Oh, favorite pre-race meal?
How far pre-race?
Let's call it 60 minutes to 2 hours. I don't know.
Probably like a light pasta dish.
Oh, what type of pasta?
Tomato pasta.
Tomato pasta.
Yeah, with a nice bit of grated cheese.
No spag bowl?
No, too heavy.
Yeah,
I feel.
I see. Nike or Adidas?
Nike all the way.
Summer or winter training?
Winter training. Yeah.
Interesting. Go-to coffee order?
Double espresso.
Oh, it's classy. He's a classy man. Best coffee shop you've ever been to?
Now, I don't know the name of it, which is really embarrassing, but it's in Mill Valley in near San Francisco in California. And it was
the holy land.
It was truly fantastic. So I apologize to the owners of that coffee shop because I can't remember it, but it was really good.
What is one word that describes your role at Genie?
Oh, building.
Warm up or cool down?
I would go with warm up. Yeah,
warm up.
Anticipation.
Yeah, he likes to feel the tension,
certainly,
the atmosphere. What's your favorite AI tool right now?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I really like Cursor at the moment. I tweeted this last night. I think right now we're at a point in AI and in software development where we're kind of at like peak vibe coding.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's so quick to build, and the models are fantastic, but they do need sort of technical guidance and make sure they don't go down rabbit holes and just build you a mess of a code base. And so that kind of it's the perfect mix of being able to build, but also still being useful to the models.
Yeah.
And I fear that sometime soon it's possible that the models won't need us to build a lot of software. So,
last but not least, what is your most embarrassing moment during training or competition?
That would probably have to be a few weeks ago when I was doing a hard lactic session. And I was lying by the steeplechase pit, and I was on the floor, just trying to be discreet with my suffering. And one of the high jumpers came over and was like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, just could you get me some water?" So he got me some water, and the moment the water went down my throat, I was like, "Okay, I'm going to throw up." So I had to go as far away from the jumpers as I possibly could, and I felt like I was walking for a mile before I eventually had to succumb to the pressure. I made it maybe 10 meters, so I was just throwing up in front of him at practice, which was
That's pretty
a little bit embarrassing.
pretty demoralizing.
Yeah.
But I guess lactic will do that to you.
Certainly will.
That is awesome. So I think if we want to get to know you, give us one thing that you think the Genie listeners should know about you.
Okay, I
Pretty
think
broad.
yeah, that's a really good question. I think one thing that they should know about me is that I care really deeply about the product. I not only am building this product, but I will be the number one user of Genie. I guarantee that.
Yeah.
I will be the one who's checking it most often, relying on the information. And so know that when I'm building the algorithms and building the software, I'm taking a lot of care in it because it really matters to me on a deeply personal level.
And for the listeners who don't know Stuart is in fact probably the biggest wearable tech user I know. How many pieces of wearable tech do you have?
On me right now, I'm wearing an Apple Watch and an Oura Ring. I was a somewhat early adopter of the Oura Ring.
Just a cheeky little plug.
I think it was actually Gen 2, so I can't claim to be super early. But I've used that significantly, and it has changed my perspective a lot on especially sleep.
Yep.
That and a book I read.
He loves a nap.
I love a nap. That and a book I read called Why We Sleep by Matt Walker definitely changed my life, really.
And this is interesting because you talk about caring about the product.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is like really at the core of what you do at Genie. How is this rooted in your education? Tell me about your background. We can obviously hear by your lovely little accent that you're from the UK.
Certainly am.
Tell me about your earliest memories of school and how you think that's really like driving what you want to do with Genie.
Yeah. So I think I have an interesting, if a little unconventional sort of educational route into the artificial intelligence scene. So when I was in high school, I wanted to be an aerospace engineer.
You like planes, guys?
Yeah, and I mean, when I look back on it, I believe that I wanted to do it because it was difficult. I've always loved a challenge, and it seemed like just the most complex course you could apply for. So I was like, cool, I'll do that. And then we kind of had the pandemic, right? Which was right as I was going into freshman year at Boston University. And at that moment, to me, it seemed, I think there was two things going on. One was that aerospace engineering was getting like outside of the space part of it, at companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, there was not a huge amount going on in what I really wanted to do, which was planes. It seemed like we'd kind of settled into an equilibrium of, Airbus A320 type planes, where it's like high efficiency, small to medium sized planes. Obviously hugely technical, challenging, but not necessarily exciting to me. The kind of things that were exciting to me were Concorde.
Yeah.
And at that time, it just didn't seem like there was anything going on with that. And then in the political sphere, with the pandemic, we just had a huge plethora of challenges that to me seemed really complex and really important as well. And I think we're seeing the results of lots of the policies that were implemented down the line now, for better and for worse.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought, actually, maybe the most complex problems to work on in life are in the sphere of economics and politics. So that's what I then started to do at my first year at university.
And where was this?
This was at Boston University.
Big at Boston.
Yeah, which was a great experience. And yeah, so I was doing like politics and economics, and I found the economics classes really interesting. Politics class is really interesting, but it became very clear to me very early on that I missed science so much. You know, all throughout my life up until that point, I'd been sort of a semi-specialist in science and mathematics. And you know, there's plenty of maths in economics, but in politics, I was really missing like any sort of. I mean, it's called political science, but you know, to be frank, I really missed science. I just missed that aspect, and so that summer, I decided I was going to change my, because I was double majoring. I was going to change my politics major to something else. And I was kind of deciding between, I think in the end, I was deciding between computer science and neuroscience. And I read a paper. I'm trying to remember the name of the paper now. But essentially, it was a paper about Alzheimer's research. And it was very personal to me at the time. My grandmother was in late stage Alzheimer's. And I thought, okay, actually there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in neuroscience. And in terms of like self-education, you can do a lot in computer science and it's much harder in neuroscience. So that's why I kind of switched into neuroscience.
I love that. And I think it's interesting hearing about your story changing. I think that's really like a really important thing to note in today's society. You know, no one who really goes into one thing is there because that's what they decided when they were 6 years old. And I guess my next question is really like, through that decision-making process, what was your biggest lesson that you took from all of that?
My biggest lesson that I pass on to young people all the time is
young.
I know, which I'm 23. I'm old at this point. No, but to high school age people, what I always pass on is, you know, you can change. It gets harder as you go down the line, but you can always reverse course and change career paths. Because you know, I was a neuroscience and economics major in undergrad, and then I took a computational neuroscience course, and we trained a really basic support vector machine, which is, you know, machine learning people will know that that's like a very basic algorithm that isn't really used at all anymore. But I saw it, and I saw a machine learn, and I was like, wow, okay, this is what I want to do. And so shopped around and looked for master's programs, and I was, you know, lucky enough to get onto the AI program here at Duke, and it's been just the most rewarding experience of my life so far.
And I think this is important to note. I think we should just address the elephant in the room.
Oh dear.
Stuart has been a student at Boston. He's been now a student at Duke. UK versus US education system. Let's go there. What do you think are the biggest differences you've noticed?
I mean, the one that people always point out is the grading. So back home, if you get 75%, you're a certified genius. And if you get 75% here, you are not a certified genius.
Yeah, I had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah.
Listeners, if anyone... Me boasting about my 73 was really a tough look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, to be clear, I don't think that one is necessarily harder than the other. The courses here are extremely hard, and by all accounts, everything I've heard back home is also extremely hard.
For sure.
It's just a difference in philosophy when it comes to grading.
For sure. And I guess the real question on my mind is pub lunch or frat party?
Oh, I mean, you've asked me an impossible question there. I couldn't possibly. I think I'm going to go with pub lunch, but that more reflects my personality. I'm not. I much prefer a more relaxed setting with fewer people.
So it's been awesome, like listening about your education and about your progress through different parts of the working world, different subjects, areas. Who would you say so far in your life and your career is your biggest role model?
So I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna say I have two like really big role models in I guess in business.
Yep.
The first is Dave Morin, who needs no introduction. I really admire the way he thinks about product in the holistic sense.
Yep.
Right. So it's design, it's technology, its user experience, and they all mesh together to form the product.
Yeah.
And his ability to kind of think through emerging technologies as well and their implications is N of one. Anyone who's interested in technology should definitely listen to More or Less, which is a podcast he co-hosts with his wife and two friends. And then the second person is, frankly, is my dad, right? So I think we are massively spoiled in technology that we have these levers that we can pull for growth. So emerging technologies, productivity gains from things like AI. But what do you do in a business that doesn't have those levers? It's all about how good you are, your outcomes, and that's pretty much it. So my dad's an equine veterinary surgeon who has worked harder than anyone I've ever come across in my entire life. And he's also managed to do it in a way that I never look back on my childhood and go, oh, I wish Dad was around more. Right? Like he would always take me to rugby. He would always make time for me if I had questions about things in school. But it really sort of drilled into me the rewards that you get from hard work. Because in his line of work, there are no shortcuts. You get more successful by developing new surgical techniques, getting better outcomes, and you're sure like growing your client base. But that in itself is a huge skill. So my dad is a huge inspiration to me.
And I think this is like awesome to hear. You know, we love Bruce. What a guy. And I think my question is going to be really about, in those role models you speak about, you know, someone like Dave Marin, who really knows product development, technology inside and out, and obviously your dad, where like your awesome work ethic comes from. How do you think those attributes in your role models are going to really like allow you to carve out the future of Genie, and how do you see that building into your role as CTO? Yeah,
so I should say that Dave's been really generous with his time with me in terms of mentoring me along this kind of startup journey. So if a lot of the times when I come across questions that are really outside of my area of expertise, I ask him for advice on them, and he's been fantastic so far in helping me with those difficult problems. And in terms of like how those two role models kind of influence my role as CTO, I think it's being able to take a step back and observe the product and the technology as a whole, but also being able to to use TikTok terms, lock in, right? And being able to knuckle down and work incredibly hard.
Yeah, I love that. So we've spoken about your education, spoken about your journey from high school to Boston to Duke.
Yeah.
I want to hear about the sport. You're an exceptional decathlete, Patriot League champion, Duke track and field team member at the moment, coming off the back of an ACC championship win.
Yep.
You're a decathlete, right? Tell me, how did you get into decathlon?
Yeah, so I was originally a high jumper because I was quite lanky when I was young. And
Weren't we all?
I don't need to explain to you that that's an advantage. And yeah, so I was a high jumper, and one day I went to an indoor competition, and basically they didn't have the high jump, but they did have a pentathlon. And so I was like, cool, I'll just do the pentathlon, and I'll just do the high jump.
Just dabble there.
Exactly. I'll just do the high jump, and then whatever else, is just fun. And I ended up getting second. Now, I should point out that I lost to first place by 1,000 points, which that's pretty cataclysmic for anyone who doesn't know combined event scoring. That's a huge loss. But I fell in love with it, and so that was really my path into multi-events.
I love that. And I think one of the things that I think about, you're a decathlete, you do lots of different things. And it's always a weird journey for anyone doing decathlon to get into decathlon, because it takes a lot.
Yeah.
If you could pick to do one other sport, what would it be and why?
It would be certainly my first love, which was rugby.
Yeah.
No, I loved rugby. I played it from, I guess, when I was about 7 till I was about 16. So just shy of a decade. Loved that sport. I think that, frankly, there are serious governance issues with the sport back home. And I think, a couple of different rolls of the dice, and I'd still be playing rugby as opposed to doing decathlon.
Interesting. I love that. And I think, you obviously chose athletics, track and field for our American listeners, and you have been incredibly successful in that. What do you think that's special about you that's made you a successful athlete, that you're still doing it at the age of 23 at Duke University with all these accolades to your name?
Yeah, it's going to be a boring answer, but it's simply just perseverance, and not the fun kind, like, let me finish this workout even though I'm feeling a bit rough. No, it's like when you're in the depths of an injury and they're saying, you got 50% chance you're going to compete again.
Yep.
And it's going to be at least a 12-month recovery.
Yep.
You look that in the eye and you go, okay, cool. Yep. I will see you in 12 months.
Yeah.
That's the biggest differentiator. There are far more people that were far more talented than me, frankly, and they've one by one kind of fallen off, as you do in multi-events, because you do it long enough, you're going to get a pretty serious injury, and I've just managed to keep showing up.
For sure, and I think it's a really important thing you said about perseverance, and you mentioned injuries.
Yeah,
it's why we're here.
It certainly is.
That's the real mission behind Genie. Tell us about your injury history, and why you think that the stuff we're doing here at Genie is then so important and so personal to you.
Yeah. So when I talk about my injury history, there's one that materially stands out, and that is my hip injury, which I sustained probably in my senior year of high school, or year 13 for our English listeners. But I kept training on it, and it wasn't bad enough to stop. It's not like a hamstring tear where it stops you in your tracks. It was moderately uncomfortable, but I kept training on it because I was trying to be tough.
Yep.
Which, hard lesson, but sometimes you don't need to be tough. Sometimes you need to accept that you're injured. I kept training on it. It got progressively worse. And then when I was out in Boston, I brought it to some of the trainers, the physios, and we found it very difficult to diagnose. So originally it was a hamstring tendonitis type injury, which I did all the rehab for that. I got PRP injections. I got some extremely painful treatments.
You got the works.
Exactly. And it didn't work. And I was really, really fortunate to be put in touch with the surgeon, Mr. Ali Bajwa from back home, who frankly saved my career. So I was able to, at the end of my first year, get surgery on the hip, and then it took, as I said, about 12 months to recover from that, and then slowly building back into jogging, then sprinting, then jumping, then a full decathlon.
Yeah, so. And I think it's it's amazing to hear your story. I think for any athlete listening, that I can almost guarantee people can resonate with some level of that story, of the perseverance, of the injury, the misdiagnosis, and all the other things that come with that. I know I certainly can. And I want to hear about Genie and about, what is it do you think about those experiences that have really rooted your passion for supporting movement, supporting health amongst athletes?
Okay, yeah. So let me imagine an alternate reality for a second with you. Imagine that when I originally sustained that small injury to the hip in my senior year, imagine I had a device that was able to tell me, hey, there's something wrong here. There's something going on at your hip. You need to pay attention to it. And it's not something that you need to train through. It's something that really does need attention, whether that be medical or physical or all the different avenues of treatment. Then perhaps I go and I see a doctor earlier. perhaps I'm able to get surgery before it gets significantly worse, and perhaps the recovery time's less. And then perhaps I have a whole other season, and then I'm a year ahead of where I am now.
Yeah.
So that is really the vision that
Yeah.
I dream of.
Yeah. It's about
with Genie.
longevity and about
Longevity.
empowering people to move better. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's all about working towards those moments of success in sport.
Exactly. I mean, I was saying to you the other day
Yeah.
that I think you asked me what's your favorite ever decathlon,
Yeah.
and you know, I just had a really fun one in Arizona where I got a PR. But
Yeah.
I can tell you, and you'll recognize this, that it doesn't even come close to the feeling I had when I crossed that line for the first decathlon after my surgery.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anything will ever get to that.
Yeah. I think it's bottling that feeling of overcoming the adversity, persevering, like you said before, is that really main theme that you've really held close from all your lessons. And I think that that's kind of something that's really special, especially with your work in Genie. And that's what I want to talk about next. I want to tell me about your role within Genie. What are you doing day in, day out? Let the listeners get to know CTO Stu.
Yeah, so I'm the head of the engineering team.
It's a big team, guys. It's a really big team.
Engineering team that, depending on how you define it, is 2 people or one person. And so what I spend most of my time on at the moment is building out the algorithms. So how do we detect these anomalies at the joint specific level? So that means collecting data, analyzing data, training algorithms, and evaluating them.
For sure. And if we take a step back from there, you know, you are leading the product development, you're leading this technical development within Genie.
Yeah.
And we're doing it all here at Duke. You're an AI engineer at Duke.
Yeah.
What brought you to Duke? How did you meet the founders of Genie? I want to hear about the story of what really kind of started Genie for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a complex question because I have been kind of fascinated with wearable technology, sensor analysis for quite a while now. But in terms of what brought me to Duke, as I said, like I was lucky enough to get onto this fantastic program, which I have to give a massive shout out to everyone who's involved at the artificial intelligence engineering program here. That's just been fantastic thus far. And I still had NCAA eligibility left, so I reached out to the head coach here and I said, hey, you know, here's my scores. I'd love to, you know, compete for you. Let me know if there's space on the team.
Yeah.
And luckily there was. And then he also told me that there was another British decathlete coming here, and I thought,
who was that?
God, I can't believe it. This guy's following me around the world.
Devastated.
I was devastated, exactly. So that's how I met you.
Yeah.
And then at the start of the year, that's how I met Mikey, who's also a decathlete, who's the third co-founder.
Yep.
And then in terms of how we came up with Genie, can I tell that story?
Yeah, you can tell the story. Go for it.
Yeah. So we all took this AI entrepreneurship class, and you know, we teamed up and we said, cool, let's create a product. And we sat in the ice baths, which is, you know, it's an interesting place to come up with ideas, but it's good because it's quick fire. Because if you don't come up with ideas, you start to get hypothermia. So that's a tip for all the what would be founders out there. But we were bouncing ideas off each other, and we landed on this idea that there really is a huge gap in the market in terms of really quantifying movement and helping not just your cardiovascular system, but your musculoskeletal system.
Yeah. Which
at the end of the day, you know, I think that a lot of people are maybe optimizing for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You know, for example, me as someone who uses wearable technology all the time, you know, I'm subconsciously or consciously optimizing for low heart rate, high heart rate variability, those sorts of measures, which are great for certain things. But a lot of people's goals revolve around movement, right? Like, I don't know, for example, I want to be able to ski until I'm 70 years old, or I want to be able to pick up my grandkids when I grow up, and or you know, us, like
Yep.
we want to be able to go to the Olympics in the decathlon,
Yep.
for example. And you know, cardiovascular tells you 10% of that story. And so that was the genesis for Genie.
And I think it's super important to really like recognize that this is a problem we're all experiencing. You know, you've mentioned your injuries. You know, I know across our founders, we've all been injured, and it was really like we were stood in the ice baths talking about how much we hate being injured and how can we fix this problem. And I think that is so powerful, something I'm really proud of. And that was my question to you. What do you think it is about Genie so far that's been your proudest moment in building this?
That's an excellent question. I think my proudest moment so far has been the initial evaluations of, you know, tests on us.
Yep.
You know, any machine learning engineer will tell you that it's a long road from initial success in small populations to broad success across broad populations.
Yep.
But seeing that we were able to detect these like movement anomalies just simply from a wrist-worn wearable, to me felt revolutionary.
Yeah.
You know,
I remember you texting the group chat, you telling us, guys, this is like, this algorithm's working.
It's actually working.
And we were all like, this is incredible. And that was, you know, that's one of the most exciting things. I guess I'm sure like that's my question. Like, you know, what is it about being a founder, working in a startup, you know, building this from the ground up what is it you love about that?
Oh, I think I love that work doesn't feel like work. It feels like a journey.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
it's very wise there from Stuart.
I've had jobs in the past where I've worked 16 hours a day for, you know, not extended periods of time, but here and there, and it's felt horrible. Really, you know, it feels like, oh, I'm grinding this out, and you know, where is this all going?
Yeah.
And you know, you start asking those existential questions because you're sleep deprived.
Yeah.
But when I'm working really hard on this, the burnout rarely comes from, oh, I'm working so hard. The burnout will only ever come for me personally when I'm hitting, you know, a technical wall. Which luckily I haven't hit too hard of a wall yet.
But I think that's an interesting thing about startups for me is it's like there's always going to be a wall that we're going to hit. You know, we're early in this. We are working hard to try and fulfill our vision.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think is important about what we're doing at Genie and how we approach those roadblocks? Because I think as athletes, we know they're going to come. But it's like, what piece of advice would you give to someone in terms of dealing with those roadblocks in any capacity, in work, in relationships, in sport, in life?
Yeah, I think if you want to go through life without hitting roadblocks and, you know, just be constantly on an upward trajectory, how do I put this? You're going to have a terrible life. Yeah, you know, the consistent progress is A, rare, and B, in the places where you can get it, it can feel extremely monotonous, and frankly boring. The roadblocks in your life, in whatever field they are really, to my mind, they're what makes life worth living. Right. There's this great quote which I don't know who to attribute it to. I heard it from John Florence, the surfer. But it goes like, you don't overcome obstacles to enter the land of no obstacles, right? Like, you have to be aware that overcoming this challenge just means you're getting closer to the next challenge. But overcoming challenges, at least for me, in my lived experience, that's what makes life worth living.
And I think that comes back to what you said earlier around the best moments you've had in sport are the ones where you've overcome challenge. And I think that is really what's core to us at Genie. And I think it's awesome to hear that comes in all capacities. That, you know, it comes in building a startup, it comes in track and field, it comes in other parts of your life also. It's all about how do we overcome these challenges, knowing that there's going to be more in the future,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that those are the things and those are the victories that are going to make us stronger. And I think that's awesome to hear. So we've spoken about AI, we've spoken about your background, spoken about sport and what you're doing at Genie. I'm going to ask you, what is one hot take you have about AI in sport at the moment? What is something that's like, you think is kind of underrated, not spoken about, but you think is like something important to note?
I think that there are certain sports that are heavily quantified. Baseball, for example, is one of them. We've all seen Moneyball, and if you haven't, then you should watch it. It's a great film. But there's a lot of sports that are sort of tending that way. I think they tend to be the sports that have the most money in them.
Yep.
Just because that's a function of if you have lots of money on the table, you're going to put lots of money behind getting the best outcomes. But I think that there is a lot of potential here for overfitting.
Yep.
So, for example, in the NBA, I think that people are overestimating how much you can game that system.
Yep.
Because it's functionally adversarial, right? So if I take a specific tactic, which has historically been exceptionally successful, for example, right now there's a huge craze around 3-pointers.
Yeah.
But if I refine that tactic further, which a lot of teams are trying to do with these like advanced AI algorithms, then there's a huge potential for some other team to come in with a tactic that works against that and blow the league apart. So I think that we're going to see some massive overfitting in sports like basketball, and probably Premier League football as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I love that. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, Stu. It's awesome working with you. Really excited about this journey. On a last note,
Yeah.
I want you to complete this sentence for me. Genie is for people who?
Genie is for people who want to move better. Full stop.
Simple as that. Full stop. Exclamation mark.
Full stop.
Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Lots of emojis. So thank you so much for listening, guys, to this first episode of Invisible Forces. We're going to be having lots more conversations with all of our founders, lots of guests. We've got some exciting things planned coming up. You can connect with Stuart on Instagram and LinkedIn, I'm sure.
And X.
And X.
Also on X, yeah.
Excellent. We'll plug them in the comments and in the captions. We want to thank you for listening again, and let's keep moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. Should we get his voicemail?
Yes. He's got an answer, right? I'm going to phone you. Should we just tell him? So this is a little extra for the episode. So for all listeners, Michael is our fabulous COO, resident American on our founding team. He's currently in Jacksonville.
He's competing at regionals.
Regionals, yeah.
Yeah. So
in the 4x4, he's a jack of all trades. You see, he's running the 4x4 as a decathlete, so he's really repping the team. We're very proud of him. Mikey, if you're listening, we miss you.
The fact he's not here is a reflection of his success. So
Yes.
it's a bit harsh that we're kind of punishing him for it.
I know,
that's showbiz.
But we want him to be included in our inaugural episode, so we're just phoning him. Do you reckon the listeners can hear that?
Please don't pick up.
Hello?
He was probably napping.
What's up?
Hey, don't worry. If you want to let it ring and just let it go to voicemail, that'd be fine.
Why, what's up?
No, it's nothing important.
I don't like this game.
No.
No, honestly, it's fine. I'll just leave you a voicemail. All right, I'll speak to you in a bit.
Okay.
Bye.
I bet he was napping.
It does take a while to go to
It
voicemail.
does take a while to get to voicemail.
Hi, my name is Michael Bennett. I am sorry I cannot get to the phone right now. Please leave a message after the beep, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.
Oh, we love you, Michael.
Thanks, Mikey. Really appreciate it.
We will see you next week for a fabulous episode. And our co-founder, Michael Bennett, will actually be here in person, not just his awesome voicemail. Have a great week, movers. Keep moving.
Keep moving.
Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the view.
Join the movement.